Welcome to my More Than Divorce series. This is where I remind you that your story doesn't end with divorce, it's just the beginning. I'm Bhavna Radia, and I'm here to bring you inspiring stories, expert advice, and real conversations that will help you discover your strength, find your joy, and build a life that's so much more than what's happened to you. So whether you're going through the early stages of divorce or rebuilding your life after divorce, this is a safe space for you to move forward with confidence, clarity, and hope. So let's dive in. Today we've got an amazing person here to chat to you. Let me introduce Misha Patel. She's a single mum of two boys, aged 10 and 12 years old. She's a narcissistic abuse survivor, a certified narcissistic abuse and somatic trauma specialist, and she's a brain spotting practitioner. She specializes in supporting people who have experienced narcissistic abuse and trauma, guiding them through to healing and to a place where they can thrive. And she's also had her own experience of divorcing a narcissist as well. So welcome, Misha. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I know your story, and I know that the work that you do is incredible. And luckily for me, you've been able to help so many of my clients through the emotional aspects of divorce as well. So I'm so glad that you could be here with me, that you can share your story and where you are now. So are you good to tell me a little bit about your story before you got divorced so that we know where you were in that space?
Yeah. I met my ex-husband at university. I was 19 years old. And within 4 years, when I told my parents, it was that whole Indian rush, you've got to get married now. And I don't think I was ready at the time, but you just go with it. And I never felt like I could get out of it. Even when I saw the red flags, it was too late. So yeah, we were married and we had a son 2 years after we got married. And then a year after that, I fell pregnant again, had my second little one. And within like 3 months, my whole life fell apart. And I didn't actually realize at the time that I was experiencing narcissistic abuse. Even though I'd studied psychology, I knew about it. Even when I'd met him, I was studying about it. But it was it was a diagnosable disorder. So you never think that there's normal people walking around on the street with these traits. It's just something that's diagnosed. So I didn't see any of the red flags. Well, I saw them, but I didn't listen to them because I was so disconnected. I was just in this relationship, thought I was loved up. And then after my second son was born, things broke down. I experienced betrayal, dishonesty, gaslighting, and I did leave, but I went back. So it took me 4 years to finally officially leave, and I went back 3 times.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that whole thing about not seeing red flags in your relationship when you are trained to see red flags. I see so many people in that space, GPs, social workers, psychologists, who talk to me about what's happening in their life. And when I say you realize that you've been going through abuse, they don't register, even though they find that in other people. It's so interesting. You're trained to spot this and you didn't see it. Why do you think that was?
Do you know what? It started from childhood, because I grew up in a South Asian family where we were very outer focused. Like, my parents loved me, they provided for me, but it was still very much, you can't do this, you can't be that, you can't wear that, what will people think? So I never really had a strong established sense of self. It was more about how can I please other people? So when I got into this relationship, I had these wounds where I felt like I wasn't good enough as just being myself, that I wasn't worthy, I wasn't lovable, I wasn't important. Someone came along, made me feel all of those ways, and you almost end up in a love bubble, ignoring all of the red flags. You make excuses, you minimize the abuse, you maximize all the crumbs of love and all the big grand gestures. So it was really hard for me to see it in that moment. I just thought I'm in love, and I didn't know what it felt like to be in a healthy relationship. My parents had well, they still do. They have a great marriage, but it's still very typical Indian. No, you don't see the affection that they don't show each other affection. I wasn't really told that I was loved. My brother wasn't either. So all these narratives that I'd created, and then I meet someone who makes me feel all of these things, just meant that I didn't see the signs. So when people come to me to do the healing work, it does have to go back to childhood, and I had to do the work. Like, even though I knew all of this stuff, I actually had to take a break and focus on me, go back to heal all those wounds that I didn't realize I was carrying.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how did you realize that divorce was coming? Tell me a little bit about your story around the end of your marriage.
So I went through an abuse cycle where I had that love bombing, and then there was a lot of devaluation. So I knew that I was starting to lose myself in this relationship. But we had kids. There was no, when you look at the outer community, I was worried about my parents, my in-laws, everyone. So I stayed. And then he actually cheated. So I was discarded. There was a brutal discard, but then there was a hoovering. So I was sucked back in again. Just when I thought, okay, this is over, it's not going to work, I was so trauma bonded. So my brain, anytime he would apologize, it's like, no, yeah, I'm going to take you back, because my brain thought I needed him to survive. I thought I couldn't survive on my own. So I went back again, and then I went back through the same cycle. You think that you can build trust with someone, but you can't once that trust is broken.
Yeah.
I had to first learn to love myself before I could love anyone else. And in that relationship, I was requiring him to make me feel good about me.
Yeah.
So that's where I kept going back, and I found it so difficult. But then the final straw came when I started working on me. And when I started realizing that I'm putting up with less than I deserve more, my children deserve more. And my 3-year-old went to nursery and told them, Daddy's not very nice to Mummy. So
wow. You
when I
heard?
went to pick him up, I went to pick him up, and the key worker was like, oh, Mrs. Patel, can I speak to you for a moment? And she goes, oh, your youngest has just said this to me. Is everything all right at home? And I made up an excuse like I'd been so used to doing. Oh, yeah, like he's just stressed with the business and stuff, and a lot's going on at the moment. So we've just been having a few arguments, but no, everything's all right. But it was a wake-up call, because you don't realize how much even though you think you're hiding it from the children,
Yeah.
they can feel what you feel. It's not what they see or hear, it's what you feel. So although I thought, oh, you know what, we're arguing when he's at nursery, but he could see that Mummy was scared every time Daddy walked in through the door. He could see that there's a disconnection. He could feel that. And he could
We
feel
always
that.
think that, don't we?
Yeah.
That we think we're staying in this marriage. Yes, there's issues, but the children aren't affected. I remember saying to somebody just a couple of days ago that, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in a toxic marriage and you think that's best for your children? Or do you think leaving and finding peace and joy, and both of you being really good parents separately, is best for your children? We don't see that, do we? We think staying is always the right thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it goes back to the stigma surrounding divorce. You think that divorce is failure, and that's where we come in and we start to reframe that with what you're doing here, because you're showing people that actually it's not failure. It's you walking away from a bad situation. And the children are more affected when they're seeing that than when they've got a happy parent who's able to regulate and be present and be there for them. So yeah, I was more worried about what everyone else is going to think. And I was encouraged to make it work, so it took me 4 years. And then eventually, my parents started to see what he was doing as well. His own parents were like, go, you deserve better.
Really?
Yeah. Not so much
really
his dad,
good.
but his mum was like, he's not going to realize, and you deserve so much better. So I knew I only had one choice to make.
I remember when I went through divorce, and I was surprised at the number of women that told me to stay. They would say, my marriage hasn't been good for the whole of it, 40 years on. I'm still not happy. My marriage hasn't been good. But women are made to sacrifice. I've not been happy in my life, but I've stayed, haven't I? So you should stay. Like, nothing could be that bad that you
Yeah.
should leave. And I was really surprised at the number of women that told me to sacrifice myself, to put up with anything that the other person did. There was nothing that was too bad.
That's what
So,
I was told. I was
yeah.
told, just be quiet. You know, when he's heated, if you're just quiet, you know, he'll calm down. That's what you need to do. I was given like all this kind of advice and people trying to make it work, but they don't look at the consequences, right? Like these women, they stay, but not only are they miserable, that affects their body and their health and their sense of self, and they end up depressed and anxious all the time. They're not living. I didn't want to just survive. I did want to thrive.
And what do you think it did to what do you think it would have done to your boys if you'd stayed?
I think it would have, well, it did affect them. When I look back now, like my eldest especially, he was labelled the naughty child at the time, but
Yeah.
he was just dysregulated. He was in an environment where both parents weren't able to give him that emotional safety. So I think it would have gone on to be like it would have affected the children more if I'd stayed, because they would have thought this is how you treat a woman, right? It's okay to shout, it's okay to not listen, it's okay to dismiss, it's okay to gaslight, all of these things. And they also would have thought that this is what life looks like, right? Like for me, I wanted to be a present mum. The joy had been sucked out of me. So I was really anxious. I was constantly, you know, cleaning and cooking, and all my self-worth was on being a mum. And that wouldn't have been good in the long run. So I think it would have really, it would have affected them a lot more if I'd stayed. Now, because I've managed to leave and do the healing work, they get to see what empathy is. They get to see what compassion is. They get to openly speak to me about absolutely anything because I'm available. You know,
Yeah.
I'm there. I'm not stressed all the time. I'm present. I'm able to have fun with them, and we enjoy things that we do together. So it's really nice that, you know, and they've got a better relationship with their dad as well. So that's helped.
Sometimes that's what happens, isn't it? That
Yeah.
actually when you go through this process, it feels like, you know, it's the worst thing, but you come out of it and there's still, you know, two parents trying to do their best and actually being more present.
That's it. Yeah.
Who made the decision to start divorce proceedings? Because obviously you're feeling this way already. Things are really tough.
Yeah.
You
So
didn't want me to go.
he did. He did. Yeah. Because he got to the point where he wanted to move the other women in, and I was becoming a burden because I was still there for my son's school year. So I wanted to get his school year done. I didn't want to move midway. So he started the divorce process, but then I didn't actually continue it until I moved, because I didn't know what I was going to need. I didn't know how my life was going to look. So I didn't actually respond. And then his grandmother got ill. She lived with us. So we kind of paused it. When I moved out and settled down myself, that's when the ball got rolling again. I replied and we decided on the terms and conditions and stuff like that. But I will tell you that where I did start realizing at the time that what I'd been in was an emotionally abusive relationship, I also knew how it would work, which is why I didn't fight. I walked away with nothing but an old car, because I just needed my mental freedom. And I knew that once I'd got myself back on track, everything else will work out. And within a year, I was able to buy my own house.
That's amazing, isn't it? Because I'm talking to people all the time and they say to me, but if I don't leave with a certain amount of assets, how am I going to rebuild my life? And obviously I'm telling my story a lot to people that I'm speaking to, and they're saying, but you were in a financially really difficult position when you realized that this was happening and you're coming through the other side. I had mostly debts. I did have finances to purchase a property, but I did have to buy a really small house in an area I didn't want to live in, just because I needed to stabilize myself. And I've gone from that place, I was homeless, living on people's floors with the 3 girls, to having a really different life. And now I've got 3 businesses. The children are growing up. I've managed to bring them up for 13 years. And people ask me, how did you get your head around this? Weren't you scared of this step of trying to manage your finances, trying to rebuild your life? So how did you achieve this? How did you go from that place which is a really scary place, leaving with nothing except your car
Yeah.
and packing your bags with your two young boys and to this place that you find yourself now. And even in the first year, buying your own home.
Yeah, I was petrified. And honestly, I think that's what I was most scared about. How will I cope? How will I survive? I couldn't even get approved for a rental property because I didn't earn enough. So when I had the kids, I wasn't working because I had two back to back. There was a good span of about 4 years 3 years that I wasn't working. Then I finally started my business up again, and it was face to face. It took a long time. So I didn't have set income. And at the time, I just needed to get out. So my uncle had to be my guarantor. And my priority just became paying that rent and putting food on the table. So there was a lot of sacrificing in the beginning. But the one thing I did invest in was my healing, because I didn't want to feel lost. I didn't want to feel broken. I didn't want to feel stuck in my head anymore. And the more I started to heal, the more I built my confidence back up to then become more vocal, to find my purpose, to learn. Because financial stuff is so, even a mortgage, right? It's so like mind-boggling when you don't know any of this stuff because you've never had to deal with it. And I was in a relationship where he was like, I'll just deal with it. I'll just deal with it. My parents have always been very open about finances and everything's together and they're very transparent. My mum knows everything that's going on. Whereas in his family, the men control the finances and it's like they provide for the women. So I didn't know anything. I didn't know what he had. I didn't know what he didn't have. It was just when I needed something, I had to ask for the money. So I made my priority becoming financially independent. That's what I wanted. I never wanted to rely on anyone again. And I knew if I tried to fight for things, I'm still attached to the outcome. Like I'm still being controlled.
Yeah.
I don't want to rely on someone giving me money one month and not the next month.
So you need to make your own.
Yeah, so my thing was, how can I get myself in a position where I never have to rely on anyone else again? So I started very small. I did have to claim benefits in the beginning because I needed to provide. And I started using that money, spending very wisely. So making sure that everything was cooked at home. I wasn't splashing out on any money. I actually sold some of the kids' old clothes as well because it wasn't going to be used. So anywhere that I could like budget, I budgeted. We did free things or low cost things as activities.
It's amazing what you can do with little money. I remember doing very similar things to you. The children were just happy, just being out on their bikes in the park, going for a walk. I remember thinking, I haven't taken them on holiday for so long, I can't afford a holiday. And I found a glamping holiday for £11.
Yeah.
And drove.
They probably loved it.
We had the best time. They still talk about it now.
Yeah.
You can take them on a holiday that's £5,000, but they talk about that moment where we spent in this hut. We had nothing. Like when you're glamping, you've got each other. Yeah. You're playing cards, you're playing football, you're going for walks, you're roasting marshmallows, watching the sun go down. It was so beautiful to see that. We went to the shops and we made lunch. We took it out for the day. We sat on the beach. It hardly cost me anything. And they remember it by selling clothes, by selling things you don't need, just budgeting. You can manage. I struggled to start off with, but I learned. And it sounds like you did something really similar to stabilize yourself initially. It's like, okay, let's just look at what we've got coming in, what's going out, make sure that works out.
That's it.
We'll deal with everything else.
Yeah. You give up on the luxuries, right? And you realize that actually you never needed any of that in the first place. But it was a way, like when I was married, the luxuries were to keep me happy because I was so miserable in the marriage. I thought that it's going to bring me happiness.
Yeah.
But actually, when I had nothing, I was the happiest.
It's incredible.
Yeah. But now you get to a position where, you can splash out on new clothes and you can treat yourself to new things as well. So, you have to remember that where you were and you really appreciate more now for those little things that you do have. And it's a step up. You can't go from 0 to 100.
I remember doing something similar, but I really concentrated on stabilizing and finding myself.
That's it.
Because I was in that place where I didn't know who I was. You give up everything about your identity, don't you? Your wife, daughter-in-law, your mum, your sister, your whatever, but you're not you.
Yeah.
And so I spent a little bit of time trying to find out who I am. What do I enjoy? And I found just happiness within myself. How did you manage that time? Because you found yourself in this place where you've left with nothing, you've had to stabilize the boys, stabilize yourself financially. Where did you go from that stage to, because you know what you've achieved is amazing. How do you go from that to buying your house in a year? Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
It started with a self-belief that I had to figure out as well. Like, I had to remember the person I was deep down inside. And I'd always been someone who had this growth mindset. I always wanted to solve problems. And I didn't believe that I could get a mortgage. So it actually took for my uncle and auntie to send me properties to get me to look. And even my parents, they didn't think I could get a mortgage. So it took me time to start believing in myself that actually I've got to trust myself again. Just because I've made these bad decisions in the past, I'm now at a point where I've got to learn to find my sense of self, my self-confidence. So I did focus on me as well, just like you. I focused on finding things that I enjoyed. I focused my energy on just being present with the kids, because if we don't have the foundation, I didn't have the capacity to even think about mortgages.
Yeah.
And that's why I did reach out to mortgage advisors as well. Two of them told me that I'm not going to be able to do anything. One did find something that I would be able to do where we could include the benefits that I was getting at the time, and we managed to make it work. But if I hadn't have spent that time, especially in those first 6 months, on my mindset, working on healing my nervous system, because I was all over the place. So I had to work on first regulating myself, and then finding joy, the things that I enjoyed in life again, who I was as a person, remembering my goals and my dreams of the life that I envisioned. Just because it didn't have a significant other, I still wanted to give my children those experiences and those things. And we really struggled in a rental property. We had no parking. It was really stressful. They had no garden. And I knew that, you know, we weren't going to be happy. So my priority was, let's get a roof over our heads. Then we can think about the other things.
Yeah. And you've actually gone out and found solutions. And there are wonderful professionals out there that can help you. So if one says no, don't think that it's a no. You can find somebody who can support you, and you have pushed and pushed until you've got that result. So it's that self-belief, knowing that you will be fine, that's got you through that place. But there was a time where your mental health was in a tricky place. And so many people during this time will say, and you hear it all the time, and I hear it all the time, that, you know, I'm struggling, my mental health is really bad, I'm feeling low, I'm depressed, I can't cope. What was your mental health like, and what can we do to help other people to manage their mental health?
I was depressed. I was anxious. I was depressed. Now I know that my nervous system was in this fight, flight, freeze state all the time. I was under a lot of stress, and it did make me ill as well. So I had to find support, and support doesn't have to be paid support. I did start off with free support, and that was things like joining Facebook groups and reaching out to people, reading other people's stories of success. I felt a lot of shame in the beginning because of everything that we'd been told, right? So I wouldn't even tell people that I was divorced. Like when I moved and my kids went to school, I just like acted like I dodged all conversations and acted like I had a partner, right? But first it was accepting. I had to accept that this is a situation. I am a single parent. I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor. So once I accepted that, I was able to start having conversations with other mums who tell me that they'd been through the same thing. And you almost build a network of people who are there as your cheerleaders. So that was really, really beneficial. And then obviously with the background that I'd had, I knew I needed professional support as well. So that's when I reached out for counselling, therapy, but you know, it all helped soothe the symptoms. It helped me temporarily to soothe the symptoms. And then I did know I needed something deeper. And that's when...
Isn't great, is it sometimes? It's a good start. I felt like it just opened wounds and left me there.
That's it.
How to deal with it after that? Like, where do I go? You've made me talk about the past, really upset, and now my hour is finished.
Yeah, it's tools and strategies that we need. I needed someone to tell me, okay, when you feel like this is what you've got to do. This is what your nervous system needs right now. Like, I see it all the time when clients will come to me and they'll be like, I've taken up a gym membership, but they're not going to the gym because all their body needs at the moment is rest. They need yoga, not the gym, right? So it's knowing what's right for you. And it is an investment. And I had to remember that it's an investment in myself. So instead of saving for fancy clothes or a holiday, I wanted to create a life where I feel like I'm on holiday all the time. So any spare money that I had was going towards things, well, saving to make me feel better by getting the right support.
And what support did you go for? And has that then fed into the work that you do?
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't have got the support that I got. So I started with the traditional free counselling and the therapy, but like you said, it opened up the wounds and it left me there with it. Because with things like narcissistic abuse, you need specialist support. You need someone who understands it and understands that it's trauma. Any emotional pain is trauma. So it was only when I started getting trauma-informed support that I actually, and from someone who understood narcissistic abuse. She was brilliant, absolutely lovely. She doesn't do it anymore, but I decided that I'm going to do this for South Asian women, because what I struggled with was finding someone who understood the family dynamics, like why I just couldn't cut off his family and in-laws and why it was so difficult to let go. Obviously, over time, I've managed to do it, but in the beginning, it's not as easy as it is with, Western families. So that's how I started off. And then I decided that I needed to become the person that I needed. So that's when I pivoted completely and I trained in narcissistic abuse and trauma-informed, techniques to create the business that I have now.
And where does that take your clients? So they come to you, maybe they're going through a divorce, not necessarily, but maybe they're going through a divorce and they're at this place where they've been through trauma. What kind of things do you do with them and what happens to them at the end?
So I become their support, because when you experience, especially going through a divorce, like we got so much wrong advice, didn't we, when we were going through it? So we feel really alone, and I didn't want my clients to feel really alone. So when they work with me for 6 months, I give them WhatsApp support in between their sessions, but I teach them tools and strategies. So the first thing we work on is their nervous system, how they can start feeling safer within their bodies, how they can start developing some self-compassion and recognizing what they've been through, releasing that shame, the self-blame and the guilt, because we carry that enormous guilt that we're messing our children up, but actually we have to reframe that and realize that, we're not victims, we're survivors. So we work through all of that and then we go back to the root cause. Your life doesn't change unless you can figure out why you took those decisions that you made. Why did I stay so long? I wanted to answer that question. Why couldn't I just be one of those women that just got up and left straight away? And I had to look back at everything that happened to me in my first 10 years of life, all the narratives that I'd created. So this is what I take my clients through, and then we build resilience. So it's called post-traumatic growth. That's the end result, where you build a resilience that you can feel safe with any challenges that come your way.
Sounds amazing. And I must say, I haven't done that work. I've done lots of other work, but I haven't done that work. And I think I'd love to go through it myself. So you never know, I might be contacting you for that. But a lot of people talk about narcissism, don't they? It's such a big word. People will ring me and the first thing they will say is, my ex is a narcissist, whether they're male or female. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
My ex is a narcissist. And what does that mean?
So it's 3 different categories, right? We've all got narcissistic traits. It's all of us have a bit of narcissism within us, because narcissism is actually like that self-love, that when you look in the mirror, you have to be able to say that you look good. When you go for a job interview, you've got to be able to big yourself up a bit. But then there's narcissistic traits. Narcissistic traits is when somebody becomes abusive. Their traits become abusive in that there's an imbalance in the relationship where you will give, and they'll take. Then you've got NPD, which is narcissistic personality disorder, which is a diagnosed condition. But I don't believe in diagnosis, because you can still suffer even if the narcissist hasn't got a diagnosis, and they're not very likely to recognize what they've got because they haven't got self-awareness or empathy. So they're not very likely to go and get a diagnosis. In their eyes, it's everyone else's fault. So I like to focus on the way that they make you feel, rather than focusing on the other person. When we're healing, we want to focus on ourselves. So yes, they might have narcissistic traits. It's good to be able to put words to it, that yes, I was gaslit, I was manipulated. It's good to know what all these things are, right? But at the end of the day, my focus is on the individual that's experienced it. So everyone throws that word out everywhere. Oh yeah, he's a narcissist, he's a narcissist. But actually, I ask people, how have they made you feel?
And by doing that, you can then deal with other people that you come across, because that might not be the only person with narcissistic traits. As you say, everyone has got some level of this in them, and there'll be lots of people you come across that will challenge you, possibly try and manipulate you. So what you're doing is not just dealing with this one person, you're allowing this person, your client, to recognize this in other people and regulate themselves, so they don't have to be in this place again. Because you come out of this relationship, hopefully they work with you and they understand themselves. They may go on to another relationship, but their own self-awareness then helps them realize if they're in that situation again.
Yeah, they've learned to look after themselves rather than giving their heart to someone else to look after. They've learned how to look after it themselves, which means that they can set boundaries. They can, they don't have to people please anymore. They can learn to say no. They can have that confidence to speak up, because a lot of the times you end up in a controlled relationship because you don't feel like you can say anything. You don't feel like you can speak up because of what you've been raised as in the past or what you've experienced. So we work on all of that. And generally, most people find that if they've got a narcissistic partner, they've probably got a narcissistic in-law as well. And they've had narcissistic friends or even their parents, siblings. It's not just the one person in their life. If you're a giver, you're going to be more likely to attract takers.
Yeah. So this can change not just your relationship with your ex, but actually your whole network, really, how you deal with people, which is, that's what we need to do. And I know that I hear myself saying to people all the time, we can talk about what your ex did. You can keep telling me the stories of what your ex did. But actually my focus when I'm looking at my clients is them. How are they feeling? Where do they need to go? What's their vision of their life? And I find that incredible, moving them to that vision.
Yeah, that's why I recommend you to my clients.
Thank you, and I really appreciate that. You've been through a lot. Your story it covers so many things, and you've helped so many people. It's not just what you've experienced, what you've learned, all the training you've had, and all the years of experience of helping clients. So with all this experience, what tips can you give somebody listening to this that's either thinking of going through a divorce or is going through this now?
The first one will be to reach out for support, and reach out for support that's not in your network, because that's when people will try and, manipulate you when you don't even realize it in the time. Because I did reach out to the wrong people in the beginning and I got the wrong advice and it didn't help me. So reach out for, support networks. There's so many of them out there. Lots of them are free. So reach out for starters to other people who have walked your shoes and got out the other end. Focus on you. Bring that focus back to you. The worst things are those first lonely evenings, weekends. And once you start getting through them, you see that actually they're not as bad as you once envisioned they'd be. And you start to find things that you enjoy again. So think about the things that you enjoyed when you were a kid. I started off with buying like a colouring book, because in the evenings I didn't know what to do with myself. I was stuck with my thoughts. So what did I used to enjoy? Because I didn't know what I enjoyed as an adult. So we went back to what you enjoy as a little kid. Give yourself find yourself a hobby.
Yeah.
But focus on your health. The first thing I would prioritize is sleep. Okay, get yourself in a good routine. Start putting controls on your phones if you find yourself scrolling. If you find yourself going for numbing behaviors like alcohol and stuff like that, try and find some support, to find other things. So our brain, when we go through something like that, is craving that dopamine. It's craving those good feelings. So what can you get those good feelings from? Even if it's chocolate, allow yourself to have that rather than that glass of wine. And what you will do over time is you will start to find things that you enjoy again. You'll start to see that little bit of hope. That hopelessness starts to come into hope, but nothing is going to be like fixed overnight. It does take time, and gratitude. Gratitude was one of the really big things as well that I've instilled in my children as well, because when you have nothing, it's so easy to compare yourself to other people. But when you look at what you have got and how much blessings you do have your way, even if it's that penny you found on the street, it's a penny more than you had before. So look for those little blessings and the gratitude. They will really change your state.
Yeah, that's great advice. The gratitude was such a big game changer for me. I remember starting out thinking, I've got nothing to be grateful for. But when you really push yourself, I used to just, I had this morning routine. I would do my gratitudes in the morning, and I would try and find something to feel grateful for. And I would say, well, I opened my eyes this morning.
The air that I breathe.
Yeah, the sky is blue. There's nothing else. But slowly, I started feeling more and more positive and more grateful. And when I was in that state, I felt that took me through the whole day.
Yeah.
Everything that would happen, I would find the benefit in it, the positive in it. And I think, I still rely on this to help me always look at things from a grateful point of view rather than the negative in it.
That's me too. Yeah.
It's a brilliant piece of advice. So, if you are in this place, look at these things that can really help.
Yeah. And I would say to slow down as well, because we often go into this survival mode where we're just functioning and doing, like I need to get this done, I need to get this done, I need to get this done. But actually, I would advise you to actually slow down and spend time with yourself, developing that relationship rather than keeping yourself busy, because it's just distracting yourself. At one point, you're going to have to deal with everything. You're going to have to face the reality. So the sooner you do it, I think the quicker you almost grieve the relationship, the future that you envisioned, and you move out of it a bit quicker.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I know I've taken up so much of your time today already. So I'm just going to close now with a final question. But the main reason for this series is to let people know that they don't have to be defined by the fact that they've been through a divorce. Because there is lots of stigma, and we've talked about that. So much stigma attached to divorce, so much shame. And also to this whole view of what a divorced single mum can do and achieve. And you're testament to that as a divorced single mum, you can achieve anything. You just have to put your mind to it and have that self-belief. So I want to show people that they can be anything, they can do anything, and you can live that life that you want and you deserve. So my final question to you is, how has your view of yourself changed since your divorce? And what do you want other people to know about their potential?
So my view of myself has changed in that I found a deep inner love for myself. I like to use this analogy that just came to me one day, and I thought it really describes my life. I was the person that gave my heart to other people and wanted them to look after it for me. But now I keep my heart locked in a cage. People are allowed access with a key, but I'll never give them my heart again. And I've learned this deep self-love of who I am as a person, how I deserve to be treated, and how I want to treat others as well, because I think that's a huge reflection of the way that you feel. So divorce became my superpower, because I found such a deep love for myself that I will never ever settle for anything less than I deserve.
That is amazing. I love that. Thank you. And what do you want other people to know about their potential?
So this is where I want them to see that the narratives we've created of ourselves are things that people have told us, or interpretations and perceptions that we've created from things that we've experienced. And it can all start with a change in those beliefs. Once you start becoming aware of these beliefs, you start to realize that actually, I don't own any of this. It's all things that I've taken on from other people. So you can let go of that and you can start figuring out your own beliefs. And if you do feel like you've got these limiting beliefs, then they can be changed. Okay, humans are people that can change. So have faith and do something about the way that you're feeling, rather than, trying to have external circumstances and external validation, find that internal validation first.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for being here. I've loved chatting to you, and I love your story and what you bring to other people as well. So I will share your contact details if that's okay. If anybody's got any questions that Misha can help with, I'm sure she'll be happy to answer. If you've got anything you want to ask me, then obviously feel free to message me as well. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Misha. Nice to see you.
And you.